If your social media feeds look anything like mine, you've probably noticed a surge in AI-generated images and videos used for everything from ads to memes to short films. While these tools are getting better, there are still tells you're looking at something made by AI. Skin that's too shiny or backgrounds that don't stay consistent, to say nothing of more obvious errors. Voice is a different story. AI-generated voice technology is further along than image or video generation, and it already sounds realistic enough to pass unnoticed by the typical listener. In fact, everything you've heard until now isn't my actual voice, but an AI clone of me. Did it fool you? And if it could fool you, does that mean robot hosts are coming to replace your favorite podcasters? Well, that depends on the kind of podcasts you enjoy. Now, before we even start, it's possible that your immediate reaction to the thought of willfully consuming AI content is disgust, loathing, or fear. Many of you watching already associate AI with a flood of slick and uncanny slop online, a mortal threat to the livelihood of every creative professional, or a mortal threat to all life on Earth. I'm not going to weigh in on the morality of AI use in this video, but I get why you might want to treat AI as something to avoid entirely. But I'm a pragmatist, and the only thing I know for certain is AI is not going away. It's no paper tiger or tech industry sham. Generative AI is genuinely powerful, which means media companies are going to use it. If you want to thrive in a post-AI world, the best thing you can do is educate yourself on the capabilities of these tools. Whether you intend to use them or not, you should understand what they can do, what they can't, and what they might be able to do in the future. So, as of 2025, how useful are AI-generated voices for dialogue and voiceover? It's a moving target. New models seem to appear every time I finish a draft of this video script. But let's start with basic text-to-speech, which has come a long way since the days of Macintosh Simple Text.
Better, happier, more productive.
The leader in the space is 11 Labs, and if you have a block of narration that needs reading, it will do a more than solid job.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
There's a lot going on under the hood here to create this kind of natural inflection and pacing. Even context-sensitive pronunciation, like the difference between live and live, or Polish and Polish. This is a long-standing challenge in text-to-speech, and now it's handled flawlessly.
I'll desert you in the desert, resume discussing my resume, and close the door when I'm close to you.
There aren't a lot of options here to control phrasing or tone, but the final output is usually solid enough not to trip the ear. 11 Labs has a pretty wide catalog of digital narrators for different use cases, but they also feature the slightly terrifying ability to clone a person's voice, as you already heard at the start of this video. If your social media feeds look anything like mine, you've probably noticed a surge in AI-generated images and videos. If you're a podcast editor, this can be a lifesaver for fixing awkward lines seamlessly. There are real limitations, though. These voices clearly sound like someone reading a script. They can't replicate conversational speech at length. This is true even for new responsive voice agents, which use always-on mic input and extremely fast text generation to create the illusion they're improvising their responses in real time. You could even interrupt the agent to have a conversation with it. So on today's podcast episode, we're going to be talking about salamanders.
Salamanders! That's a great topic. Did you know that some salamanders can actually regenerate their limbs? Talk about a superpower.
I didn't know that. So are salamanders just lizards?
That's a common misconception. Salamanders are actually amphibians, not reptiles like lizards. Salamanders spend part of their lives in water, while most lizards are strictly terrestrial.
This is a great podcast.
Thanks. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm always up for a good amphibian discussion.
Voice agents can think quickly, but they still usually sound like they're reading off a page, because they effectively are. That said, there are techniques that can disguise this effect. The most interesting example is found in Google's Notebook LM tool, which can create a 10-minute podcast episode summarizing any topic in minutes.
We're diving deep into AI voices in podcasting today, and things are getting wild. Let me tell you, it's like, think AI image generators, but for voices.
Yeah, and it's tempting to focus on the positives, especially with potential for things like, hyper-realistic ad reads. But we also need to be real about the limitations.
These summaries are often pretty superficial, but the voices themselves sound remarkably lifelike, like they're actually thinking about what they want to say next. That's because Google includes disfluencies, the ums, uhs, repetitions, pauses, and mispronunciations that characterize fluid human speech.
There's a stage where it adds my favorite new word, which is disfluencies. That turns out to be crucial because you cannot listen to two robots talking to each other. It would be just painful to listen to.
Disfluency helps these generations sound much more human. But there's still an eerie, cheerfully detached quality to their delivery, even when they discover their own show is getting canceled.
We got the news, just like you probably did, that Deep Dive is done. Over.
Canceled.
Exactly. October 1st, curtains closing, all that.
It's a lot to ponder.
It is.
When I hear the 11 Labs clone of my own voice, I think, it's not bad, but it doesn't really sound like me. Sometimes it raises the pitch of odd words or puts emphasis in a place I wouldn't. Like everyone, I speak with a certain musicality and pace that this AI homunculus has smoothed out and turned into something pleasant but impersonal. That musicality is called prosody, and it's the next big hurdle AI voices have to solve to be as versatile and engaging as actual human speech. There are many companies out there tackling the problem of prosody, and they're taking three main approaches. The first is emphasis control, which allows users to individually adjust the pronunciation, pitch, speed, and volume of every word generated to get that musicality just right.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head. It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
Tools like WellSaid and Murph.ai have voice editors that offer fine-grained control, but they can be a little kludgy. They have a tendency to introduce artifacts, those inconsistencies where speech breaks or sounds robotic from being stretched in unnatural ways.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive. It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive.
It's also pretty time-consuming to go word by word across an entire podcast script adjusting intonation. But if you have one line you need to get perfect, it can do the trick. Unless you're an expert linguist, describing voice in emotional terms is easier than mapping out the exact pitch and volume word by word. That's where emotion control comes in. Generators like Hailuo and Cartesia include options to make your AI voice sound angry, sad, disgusted, fearful, or curious.
Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think. Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think. Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think.
However, I found these effects only really work well when applied subtly. Push the effect too far, and the voice often sounds pinched or distorted or like a totally different person all of a sudden.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
All these sliders and knobs offer the illusion of total control, but their ability to craft convincing prosody is very limited. A blunt instrument that can't match the precision of the human voice. The most impressive results I've seen come from the third approach, prosody matching. Tools like Altered.ai and Respeecher let you record your own line reading, then morph it into a target AI voice. It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
It is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head.
This lets you nail a single line reading exactly how you want it, or record an entire podcast and change your voice into the voice of Orson Welles. My name is Orson Welles, and I like to eat bugs!
My name is Orson Welles, and I like to eat bugs.
Of course, since Orson Welles probably wouldn't read a script exactly the same way you would, this process can't help but lose some ineffable quality in translation. So, what does this offer podcasters in practice? For instance, could hosts outsource their ad reads to their own vocal clone so they never have to talk about DraftKings again? Technically, sure, and the ad quality might even be pretty decent. But once listeners discover that ad was completely computer generated, and their favorite host didn't even pretend to endorse that product, you've lost the persuasive power that makes that ad read valuable to sponsors in the first place. On the other hand, newspapers like the Washington Post have been offering text-to-speech versions of their articles for years, and many subscribers find it a useful feature. They don't bump on it because they have no relationship to the personality of the newsreader. The value comes entirely from the content. AI-generated voices are sonically consistent and clear. They can mimic conversation, they can even sound emotional, but they can't scream, they can't laugh, not convincingly at least. Hey, so I want you to laugh like I just said something really hilarious.
All right, I'll play along. Ha 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 ha. You got me there. What was it? I'm dying to hear it.
All right, laugh for me one more time. Really laugh naturally. Ha 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 ha.
Okay.
Okay, you sounded sarcastic there. Could you actually laugh for me? Ha 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 ha.
Okay, I'll try. Ha 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 ha. You're really testing my comedic limits here. What's so funny? Let's hear it.
They don't have the tics, quirks, and micro-inflections that come from individual personality and charisma. The more a podcast relies on personality, the less useful AI voice is to them. So if your show relies on straightforward factual content, hard news, history, biographies, science, even true crime, the robots may well come for your job. It won't be long until the Spotify and Apple podcast charts are flooded with AI shows pumping out fully generated conversations about true crime at a rapid pace.
So, I got something super cool for you. This week, we're diving into the mysterious case of Emily Carter. You know, the journalist who disappeared in 1998.
Oh, absolutely. Emily was last seen while investigating some serious local corruption.
Don't be shocked if some of these shows do significant numbers, because the primary value of those shows would come from the content, not the personality. Fiction and documentary creators might find AI voice somewhat useful for narration or small character roles, but the tools to shape vocal performance aren't developed enough for large, complex projects. At least not yet. As for interview podcasts, chatcasts, comedy shows, anything where enjoying the personality of the hosts and guests is the whole point, these shows have nothing to fear. Few listeners will develop a parasocial relationship with a fancy synthesizer. In fact, far from the vaunted intimacy of podcasts, listening to AI voice feels very lonely. Even in the best case, it feels like having a website read to you. Talk shows need one or more humans in the mix to actually be engaging. For now. But maybe not forever. Can you tell everyone watching this video to like, comment, and subscribe if they want more essays about the future of podcasting like this?
Sure, everyone. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the future of podcasting, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful essays.